A few days ago in Boston, there was an event called the Straight Pride Parade. The event was basically one big troll, and it was people who were conservative or just a troll who showed up to be silly. Some people dressed like clowns. Milo Yiannopoulos was the Grand Marshal. He's a gay man. The whole thing was meant to probably, in my opinion, get a rise out of the left. Several anti-fascist organizations organized protests, many people associated with the far left. They ended up getting into clashes with the police. I'm not going to play the game of who did what, but several police were injured, and I believe there were about 36 arrests. In my opinion, the people who showed up to protest a troll march are nuts. I don't know where they're getting their information, but they genuinely believe they were going after fascists. Yes, the man dressed up like a clown, the true fascist. I think they were intentionally trying to be absurd, but whatever they did, Antifa showed up, and there were many, many arrests. I've talked about the prospect of a civil war. I don't know what will happen, but I have to say it feels, right, that this is the end result of what's going to happen. Take a look at this story. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez promotes fundraiser for Boston protesters associated with Antifa. Let's be real. They are Antifa, okay? Antifa is not like a club with a membership card, right? It's just an ideology. It's a far-left militant ideology now receiving support from far-left Democrats that are actually in Congress. Not just AOC, but Ayanna Presley. So yes, it's the far-left Democrats unsurprisingly supporting people who are out of their minds. I've never seen I don't know of any situations where American citizens were protesting their neighbors. I mean, maybe I'm just wrong. Maybe you can give me an example. But at least in my life, most of what I've seen from the left was protesting against the government. Now they're showing up to protest a guy just like a clown or a middle-aged guy carrying a Trump flag. I don't really understand. If somebody wants to march around and be silly, who cares? But they did. And they did get violent. And people did get hurt. And now they're fundraising on their behalf and calling the people at the Straight Pride rally white supremacists. I believe this shows that we may be rolling downhill with no way to go back up. There's no way to stop the flood. It's coming. This is how insane things are. That you have high-profile politicians with, what does she have, like 5 million followers saying they're white supremacists. It was like a guy was wearing a clown suit, dude. I don't know what you think is happening, but we don't see the world the same anymore. And there's nothing we can do to stop it. I want to talk about what's going on with the Straight Pride rally and AOC, but I also want to get into what's happening with Trump and the fracturing of media and this breaking of reality. I believe the left lives in its own parallel universe now because they're unwilling to actually do the research. So let's get started with this story. Before we do, head over to timcast.com/donate if you'd like to support my work. There's a PayPal option, a crypto option, a physical address. But the best thing you can do is share this video. YouTube deranks independent political commentary. So, look, they're propping up CNN, MSNBC, Fox News. If you think I do a good job, sharing this video on any platform really does help. But let's read. The Daily Caller reports, New York Rep. AOC promoted a fundraiser for bail money for a group of counter-protesters that included Antifa members after a straight pride parade in Boston, Massachusetts. Quote, I'll just read her tweet right here. One way to support the local LGBTQ community impacted by Boston's white supremacist parade, contribute to the bail fund for the activists who put themselves on the line protecting the Boston community. Any money left over goes to Massachusetts Bail Fund. And there's also the tweet from Ayanna Presley. Join me right now in making a contribution. Thank you to the allies and accomplices who stood in the gap and laid their bodies on the line today in a front LGBT hate march. To everyone feeling unseen and vulnerable today, we got you. Equitable outrage. Our destinies and freedoms are tied. Here's the point, at least the way I see the straight pride thing. They want to prove that simply minding their own business would be offensive and get a rise. You might say, why does someone need a straight pride parade? It's actually a good point, and the reality is they don't. They know, however, by simply minding their own business and being proud of themselves, the left will come and protest. It's the same thing as those signs that said it's okay to be white. They know that by simply being tepid, not supremacists, just literally saying, hey, it's okay, it's fine, they would get a rise out of the left. They're trying to expose hypocrisy on the left. They're trying to troll them, and it works. Check this out. They say, indeed, arrests did occur. 36 individuals were arrested Saturday with numerous charges of assault and battery on a police officer. and one juvenile arrested for assault and battery by means of a dangerous weapon, according to the Boston Herald. They say reports from USA Today and the Herald indicate that many counter-protesters identified with Antifa, a far-left group that embraces violence to achieve political goals. One member of Antifa told the Herald, quote, "We're covered in black, so when we attack these guys, we can't be prosecuted. They are fascists 100%. How else are you going to get them to shut up? From what? Wearing clown costumes." I kid you not, there was a guy just like a clown, walking around as a clown. And many of these people do this. You know why? It's intentionally embarrassing to the outside. Think about it. They know they look absurd, and they want that to be the case. They want Antifa to show up and protest clowns. And they are. They really are. It's a meme, right? The clown world meme. But when these people show up like clowns, the left goes, oh my God, how embarrassing for these people. That's the point. They want to look absurd and silly and embarrassing so that when people, in black clad outfits show up with crowbars and weapons, they look insane. Here are the ramifications. We see this story from the Boston Herald. Call Antifa what they are, domestic terrorists. Well, I'm not going to read through this story. It's from the 1st, the day after the event. I'm not going to read through this. They do mention the 36 arrests and 4 police who were injured. I want to show you this from 2017. They already do. The FBI and Homeland Security already refer to what they do as domestic terrorists. They say confidential documents call the anarchists that seek to counter white supremacists domestic terrorists. Well, let me explain something to you, okay? People dressing like clowns, they're not fascists. They're literally just walking around minding their own business. Antifa is the authoritarian, scourge. But it doesn't matter. Look, I've talked about Antifa on many occasions. They're out of their minds. We'll get to that point and why. But I want to stress, what really matters is that people on the left and the right don't see the world the same way anymore. It's actually moderates and conservatives who are united, and then the left, which has gone off the rails. And I believe this is partly due to media. And boy, do I have a really, really great example showing it's so ironic. You know how I love using fire trucks on fire as a good analogy for irony? A fire truck's supposed to put out fire, so when it bursts into flames, it's funny. Funny in the hypothetical, not if it was literally happening, I'd be shocked. But I have an article from Axios that talks about Trump allies trying to, accuse the media of lying, and the story literally gets it wrong. It's a story that manipulates or lies about what's actually happening and then claims it's Trump who's trying to do it. And I have the data to actually back it up. But let's go back to this story. They say, call ugliness and violence what it is. Mob rule has no place on Boston streets. This is from the Boston Herald editorial staff. Okay, it's an editorial statement from the newspaper itself. There's a reason why I'm not going to read Adriana Cohen's. No disrespect. But this is her personal opinion, which the Boston Herald has published. Well, we already know that Antifa is described as domestic terrorists. There's no classification system for making a group a hate group or a terrorist group. Doesn't exist. So to all the people saying, we must label Antifa as terrorists, that doesn't happen. It doesn't work that way. But here we have the Boston Herald themselves pointing out that these people who showed up engaging in large-scale intimidation and thuggery, it was the left. It was extreme leftists bullying and harassed anyone they deemed divergent from their groupthink. They spit and punched and yelled hateful things at law enforcement, and by Saturday night, there were 36 arrests and 4 injured officers, according to Boston police. 9 people faced charges of assault and battery on police officers. Our elected leaders need to call out Antifa for what they are, a hate group. Now, listen, like I said, there's no classification for that. But here's what's alarming. The Boston Herald can point out exactly what this was. Who cares if these weirdos want to march around like clowns? They're doing it on purpose, but they're allowed to, and they're not violent, and they're not hurting anybody. When Antifa shows up and claims they're fighting against fascists, and far-left Democrats in the House support them, I gotta say, that's really alarming. AOC doesn't seem to know what she's talking about half the time. She has gaffe after gaffe. She lies. She turns her gaffes into policy positions. She does. She once claimed a $21 trillion accounting error, like not real money, could pay for more than half of, universal health care. She then claimed that billions of dollars in tax breaks was the city of New York giving money to Amazon. She doesn't know what she's talking about. And she's rallying a base that is clueless as to what's really happening because they don't read the news. She's rallying them to give money to groups that have been called domestic terrorists by federal law enforcement. I just don't understand it. Here's what's happening, okay? There is a fracture in the media landscape. And this is what we're seeing. We're seeing a left and people like AOC that don't do research. They're essentially playing a game of telephone with themselves and believing this fictional reality. And that's why moderates and conservatives tend to be united. Moderates and conservatives actually look at the source material. Take a look at this story. Trump allies plot new war on social media. This is sort of in line with what the New York Times did. For those that aren't familiar, the New York Times claimed that Trump allies were trying to target them over social media. Interestingly, the latest update from Axios is that since the New York Times smeared this loose group of Trump supporters, they've actually used the press to start fundraising. But we'll come back to this. In this story, they claim Trump and his allies are lying about social media bias to attack the press. Okay, I'm not a fan of the Trump guy. Everybody knows it. I have no problem saying disparaging things about him. And I was on stage at an event recently where I said I actually quite enjoy when people make fun of the guy. Okay, I just don't have Trump derangement syndrome. Like any regular human being who's been involved in politics in this country, you don't like everybody, and you can make jokes and insult the politicians you don't like. It's fine. It's how it's always been. Certainly, there are extreme and hyperbolic statements about every president, George Bush, Obama, whatever. Look, Trump is the guy who won and he's going to do his thing. It is what it is. But here's what I realize. There's a reason why I don't have Trump derangement syndrome. I check the facts. I read the source material. The people on the left who don't think they're actually looking at, the worst of the worst, the nightmare return of fascism. So they put on all black and they go on the street and beat random people. They've gone nuts. They've been indoctrinated by a fractured and broken media, and they're not really getting the truth. And I know it's probably pointless for me to say because they'll accuse me of doing the same thing. However, I use left-wing sources on purpose, okay? I check all the facts and I use a third-party rating agency, NewsGuard, on purpose to check my own personal bias. And I have to say, if moderates and conservatives are seeing the world in a similar way, and according to at least data, I believe it was from Pew, they have a healthier news diet from left and right sources, I think the left has gone nuts and they're just consuming and producing fake news. Let me prove it to you, though. Check this out. They say, President Trump's campaign and key allies plan to make allegations of bias by social media platforms a core part of their 2020 strategy, officials tell Axios. Well, we've known this has been going on. I actually went to the White House summit over this. They say, look for ads, speeches, and sustained attacks on Facebook and Twitter in particular. The sources say, the irony, the social platforms are created and staffed largely by liberals, but often used most effectively in politics by conservatives, the data shows. Okay, let's assess that situation. That's true. I wouldn't say liberals, I'd say progressives because I'm a liberal, but they are used most effectively by conservatives, and the data does show it. The left can't meme, that's the joke, right? Here's the thing. Because conservatives are so effective, it looks like they're being kneecapped by the media companies because they don't like that. The left has become humorless. Look at their reaction to Dave Chappelle's comedy special. Universal panning among the left. Almost universal, okay? Yeah, they're not funny, and they're ineffective at spreading a message. For whatever reason, I don't know why. Conservatives and moderates have had a good time making memes. So what do these companies do? Kneecap. Slow them down, hurt them because the left can't figure it out. Let's read on. Why it matters. Trump successfully turned the vast majority of his supporters against traditional media, and he hopes to do the same against the social media companies. That's just not true. First of all, this is an op-ed. Do they say op-ed anywhere? Well, they should. Trump didn't turn people against the media. The media created Trump. And if we're going to play a game of, derivative, finding the root cause, then I think that's the fairest assessment you can make. The media was so sure Hillary Clinton was going to win. She didn't. The media, look, Trump didn't create this phenomenon. He's a symptom of whatever is happening, this fracture between the media and the people. They claimed Hillary Clinton had, 97% chance of winning, and then Trump ended up winning. It could just be statistics. But the media couldn't see it. They were shocked it happened. And Trump got elected because whatever was happening before him. Let's read more. They say, Republicans' internal data shows it stirs up the base like few other topics. Maybe it's because people are being banned unfairly. In the same way we've seen trust in legacy media organizations deteriorate over the past year, there are similarities with social media companies, a top Republican operative involved in the effort told me. Between the lines, they say. The charges of overt bias by social media platforms are way overblown, several studies have found. But if the exaggerated claims stick, it could increase the chances of regulatory action by Republicans. Let's just stop right here. I'm going to give you some basic proof. Everybody knows that Twitter bans misgendering. It's a fact. Now, most people understand. Ben Shapiro, for instance, one of the highest profile conservative pundits in the world, one of the top podcasts, he doesn't agree with that definition of misgendering, nor do any of his fans, or most of his fans. They don't believe that you can just change your pronoun. Okay, that means Twitter has a rule that specifically targets conservatives. That's the easiest way to explain the bias. Of course, there are many other examples. Case in point, the Gizmodo story that broke the news that staff at Facebook were biased and were removing conservative stories from trending. Or how about the leaked emails from Project Veritas? You don't gotta like the way they frame things, but the emails are legitimate, showing that Google staff were seeking to hinder moderate and conservative personalities on YouTube by kneecapping their channels, reducing recommendations and suggestions. It's a fact. It's not over-exaggerated because exaggeration is an opinion. It's literally happening, and people get banned every day, and they're upset by it. Trump knows this, and people have a right to express themselves. This story is trying to claim there's no bias, and it's Trump who's trying to fracture, trust in media, but they're literally presenting a biased opinion on what's really happening. Look, we can claim it's exaggerated or under-exaggerated or over-exaggerated. It's irrelevant. There is bias, period. Period. Whether or not you want to claim it's a serious issue or not is an opinion, but it is happening. Let's read more. They say, tech execs see it this way. They know the escalation is coming, so they are cranking up outreach to leading conservatives and trying to push hard on data showing that conservative voices often outperform liberal ones. Irrelevant. The performance of a conservative voice has nothing to do with whether or not smaller channels are being deleted or banned or suspended. Just because some conservatives are better at the internet than liberals doesn't mean their rules aren't biased. The story goes on. Reality check from Axios chief tech correspondent Ina Fried. What is real is that most of the platforms have policies against bias that some conservative figures have run afoul of. And there's the reality check. Okay, I'll accept that. You know why? If you have rules and it tends to be conservatives that run afoul of those rules, isn't it fair to say that perhaps those rules overwhelmingly target conservatives? Are we done here? They don't seem to understand what bias means. Does it mean the tech executives are saying we hate conservatives? No. It means they said, here are a list of rules. Conservatives, hey, excuse me, we don't agree with your idea of misgendering. Too bad, they say, and then ban those people. Right, that's called bias. It means that the internal worldview of the people running these companies is at odds with conservatives who have a legal right to speech. This story is incredible. But here's the main point, because I don't want to spend too much time on this. A nation without shared truth will be hard to impossible to govern. It's true. And that's one of the reasons we have Trump. Trump didn't create this problem. The media didn't see it coming. That shows you that the media has already lost whatever shared truth with the public. It's split. The public doesn't trust them. There you go. Now, Brian Stelter recently ran this story, saying why Trump's constant attacks on an independent press are so dangerous. An independent press, actually, it's quite the opposite. Trump is railing on the corporate mainstream press and is actually supporting the independent speakers. So no. In fact, I was invited to the White House summit, and you know what's really funny? I routinely rag on the president and call him boorish, and I make fun of his character and his behavior, and I've criticized many of his policies. It's funny, though. I'm not going to make 1,000,001 videos screeching that Orange Man is bad because CNN does it for me. I don't need to. And also, I don't have Trump derangement syndrome. I don't think it's the end of the world. I just kind of don't like the guy. That's okay. I understand there are conservatives who don't like my people either and say, Tim, how could you support someone like Tulsi Gabbard? And they say, you're nuts, you're wrong. Great. Totally respect your opinion. But you don't see Tulsi derangement syndrome. In fact, conservatives tend to be supporting her because the DNC is cheating. So look, the moderates exist. And Tulsi is actually a progressive, okay? But the media, they want you to be in their cult of Orange Man bad or else. And they claim they're independent. Sorry, I was invited to the White House, and I am not an ally of the president or his policies. Quite the opposite. But I guess the way they see it is if you're not walking in lockstep with Trump derangement syndrome, you must be supporting him. It's mind-blowing to me. I can literally be like, okay, well, that thing he did was kind of okay, but I don't like that military thing he did, and that's considered support. Seriously, tepid criticism of the president, like leaning away from, they consider it support. Well, they're trying to claim that Trump is creating the problem, but that's the point. He's not. But here's the best part. They say, Look at this. Some of what Trump posts about the media is legitimate criticism, but much of it is misleading. At the root of it all is a lie. That legitimate news outlets are fake. When he says journalists routinely make up sources out of thin air, for example, he has no proof of the charge. He either misunderstands how the press operates or is misleading people on purpose. He's been saying it for years, and he's been corrected for years, so at this point, the latter is more likely. There's actually a story about some German dude, I don't have it pulled up, who literally made up news. But let's play a game. I've actually pulled up evidence of fake news. What you're seeing here is one of my favorite citations, because it's actually a bit old too. The Life and Death of the Seth Rich Conspiracy Theory by the Washington Post, changelog, from a website called NewsDiffs. And we can see that it was first archived May 24, 2017. But for some reason, it was changed in November. I wonder why that is. Well, thanks to NewsDiffs, we can compare with previous. The reality is, it's quite complicated, but the story itself is fake. It's fake. The story claimed that Kim.com may have been hacking into the private Gmail account of Seth Rich or something to try and create proof of a conspiracy. But Dave Weigel literally made it all up. He did. And then 6 months later, he went in and changed it. I'm not going to read through the whole thing, but it's there. You can search for the story. You can go to NewsDiffs and pull it up. You can see how he changed it from trying to insinuate that Kim.com was hacking into this person's account, in Seth Rich's account, into, it's just speculation. The point is, here's a story where they literally framed it as though Kim.com did this. Several high-profile reporters shared it. It is fake news. And then 6 months later, he changed it. You know why? That way, if you go back to the original story, you don't see the fake news. So here's what happens. When the story goes public, it gets a ton of traffic. 6 months later, he makes the changes and says, what happened? I don't know. But the internet is forever. And we know. But I got a couple more stories, or at least one more. This is what I'll leave on this note. Okay, look, I want to make sure that the main point is what you get. A straight pride march. A troll. People dressed like clowns. Clearly not serious, very tongue-in-cheek, and meant to be ridiculous. But these people are serious who show up. These far-left extremists who show up are serious and deranged. Why? Because they're being inundated with fake news. Completely inundated by fake news. But they live in this parallel reality where they think Trump created it. They seem not to have the ability to do any research. They don't seem to understand basic policies. They don't seem to actually hear the interviews, and they believe they're right, and it's scary. Fake data, fake research is produced by organizations, and it gets published with impunity, just without fact-checking. And now we're all stuck in this world. They claim Trump and his allies are trying to claim that there's a social media bias, or there's a bias in the press. Trump didn't create the bias in the press. The bias in the press exists. Channels like mine exist because we cut through the noise and we call out the BS. Unfortunately, I have seen many people. I'll give you actually an example from today. I made a video on my second channel about this study claiming that YouTube feeds people, down a radicalization pipeline. It's not true. The study actually just mixes and matches channels claiming they hold ideologies they don't, and even one instance claimed one person was two people. It made no sense. But the data is fake. I made a video pointing it out. A far-left activist posted on Facebook, and someone told them it was fake, and they said, nope, it's real. They posted my video. I refuse to watch it, they said. Well, there you go. They refuse to read the news that can break their bubble. And it's this bias that humans have where they've invested too much into this reality, and they refuse to break it. Could you imagine if you worked for years to build something only to find out you were wrong the whole time? Your entire life was a lie? Humans refuse to acknowledge it. But the scary thing is, if they want to live in this parallel reality of insanity, they're going to drag us all down with them. And that's what we get now. AOC is calling for these people they're calling for people to donate to these lunatics who show up and think they're fighting against fascists, and they were literally protesting like dudes dressed up like clowns. That's how insane it is. And look, I know it's funny, but I have to stress this point. People marched as clowns. They had no weapons, they had no shields, and the police said, okay, we're going to let you march. You're legally allowed to. And these La Resistance types, people with delusions of grandeur, are marching around getting into fights with cops. And politicians in the House are supporting it. We have some kind of growing, I don't know what you want to call it, infectious ideology. These people have lost it, and they're dangerous. They're very dangerous. I'm not going to get into bigger details because I know YouTube's going to punish this channel for talking about it, but it's getting bad. What we saw with the immigration facilities, numerous facilities that were attacked, it's getting bad. Well, I think we're at 5 now. And that's being pushed by people like AOC. These people are nuts, okay? I'm going to say it one more time. I'm sorry but I have to drive this point. Ocasio-Cortez and Ayanna Presley, far-left Democrats, are raising money for a group of people who showed up to protest with violence, to riot against people who are dressed like clowns. Not all of them, but seriously, that's what was happening at the Straight Pride event. Clowns. What do you think is happening? They've gone nuts. Go home. Crack open a soda. Watch some TV, man. Chill out. But if people can't dress up like clowns and wave little flags and wear red hats anymore, I don't know what to expect next. But you have politicians supporting it, so I'll leave it there. Stick around. Next segment will be coming up at youtube.com/TimCastNews at 6 p.m. Thanks for hanging out again, and I'll see you all next time.